And now we are live with Mark. All right. So Mark, how's it going?
Yeah, I'm great, Ryan. Good to be here today with you.
Nice. Where are you located in the world?
Yeah, so I used to be in London, and about 3 years ago, I moved down to sunny Portsmouth on the south coast of England in Hampshire.
Nice. Nice. But you have to be indoors for this interview, unfortunately.
Indeed, yeah, we haven't got the weather with us today.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to talk with you today because um, I know that you are big into one of the most influential industries that has emerged in like the last couple of years, and that's artificial intelligence. Um, but before we kind of dive into that, I would love to hear a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and what have you done professionally that's kind of led you into the world of AI.
Yeah, of course. So, yeah, I'm Mark Cann. I'm essentially a marketing consultant. I've been in marketing for well over 15 years now. Started out in sales as an SDR before it was called an SDR, and basically moved into search marketing and online marketing shortly, kind of after that. And for the last 5 years, I've been working in B2B marketing and been working on everything from like rebrands for, big corporate brands like Capita, right through to working for, fast growth MarTech companies like Demandbase as well. And yeah, just basically, and now what I'm doing is kind of I'm consulting for companies on their go to market strategy as a go to market partner.
Very cool. So, how did you like get into leveraging AI for businesses as part of the service that you deliver? Um, was it that you saw opportunity and you leverage it in your own business, and now you know that you can help others, or directly when you knew, when you started finding out about AI, you're like, I need to be able to do this for others. Like, how did that go?
Yeah, definitely. I think, like a lot of people, I started playing around with ChatGPT and just prompt engineering, and then that led me down kind of the rabbit hole of trying like other large language models. So one of the first things I did actually, which was quite, what was that? Probably 2 years ago now, is I worked with a basically like a ChatGPT wrapper. So basically something that sits on the underlying large language model, OpenAI, and I created my own kind of coach. So it was like a Mark coach, like a clone of me. So that kind of really was like a really good learning experience for just kind of seeing like, well, does it answer all the questions that you give it? And then when it doesn't, where does it get those from? And does it still sound like you or not? So the technology wasn't really there yet, but that was a great experiment to just sort of find out what it could do. And since then, I've kind of discovered that actually you can use it for much more than just kind of typing in prompts in ChatGPT. You can actually plug into the back end of ChatGPT, OpenAI, and you can get it to do all sorts of things, but mainly around things like web research, as an example.
Mm-hmm. That's incredible. Like, I think when it came out, a lot of people were fascinated by the novelty of it, but not necessarily of the utility. Like, how can I apply this? I remember sitting around. It was 2022. I was head of growth for a company, um, a SaaS company, and our CEO was like, it had just come out. Like, ChatGPT had just been released like 2 days before, and we're like on this big team meeting where there's like 30 of us in the meeting, and we were just making chat, and someone said, by the way, has anyone here tested out that new Chat GPT thing?
Yeah.
And like half the room had kind of found out, like had like knew what it was, and then the other half of the room was like, what is that? And so then like the CEO like, oh, you guys hadn't heard about it? Oh, I've been testing it for like 24 hours. Like, let's pull it up. And he pulled it up in the middle of a meeting that had nothing to do with ChatGPT, but we were just all shooting the shit, and he started playing with like make a song about, or tell me a poem about blah blah blah, and he would just like start putting in these random commands, and we were all so floored by the ability of that, what we now look at as kind of crude almost now, just 2 years later, the ability of the AI to just create.
Yeah.
So we've seen, fast forward to now, we're all used to, especially in the marketing space, used to AI, but there's still a lot of people, small businesses, business owners, that have never embraced or never really gotten beyond the, oh yeah, I heard you can like make funny stuff with AI if you ask it questions and it can answer. Like it's advanced way further than that. And it's gotten to the point where people are leveraging AI to actually deliver results, right? Um, what are the things that people need to start thinking about in order to leverage AI and implement it in their businesses so they can start to see measurable results? Like, in what kind of results could a small business owner, let's say that has less than 50 employees in their business, what could they start to look at
Yeah.
and do?
So I think probably the first thing they could do is similar to if you were to spec like a new job and you wanted to hire for a particular position, you'd put together as part of that spec like a set of like daily and regular tasks that they would be doing. And I think if you looked at it that way of what are the things that take up the most time, but apply it to somebody who's already working on that particular job. So if I give an example, an SDR, sales development rep, might spend hours and hours like researching on lead lists to find decision makers and find their emails. And they might do the same when they're actually like crafting an email, as an example. Whereas in actual fact, you could do a lot of that with by basically linking different AI technologies together and use it kind of as a research tool. So it would save you a lot of time. The other thing that I think it's doing really effectively is rather than having like lots and lots of different tools as part of like the marketers or the commercial leads tech stack, it's actually consolidating a lot of it and making it simpler. So you're actually being able to access a lot of the tech and the like different AI tools and now making the APIs open. So what does that mean? So let's say you wanted to put together a list of like B2B software as a service companies as part of a lead list. Well, we all know that LinkedIn and their categorization is fairly archaic. And so, what you could do is you could pull a list of companies and then you could import that into clay.com. And then, what you could do is basically run a column on that where you'd use OpenAI and give it a prompt to basically describe what a B2B company is and what would be on their website, and then describe what you would see on a B2C company website. And then you'd basically ask it to categorize which one of those it is. And if you think about that in terms of research time, even if you were to outsource that to like a virtual assistant, that could take like up to a day or two. And you can do that by these AI web assistants actually visiting each of those websites and looking for different keywords and other, like categorization to basically find and define it.
Wow. And so it's about maximizing productivity more than it is about it doing the work for you. It's doing work that you would already have to do anyways, but just faster.
I think so. And one of the things that I'm going to be doing a talk about soon is how actually here in the UK, where I'm based, that SMEs have been basically like slower to adopt AI.
Right.
But in actual fact, the productivity gap, the gap between the capability of the technology and what you get with enterprise level AI is relatively small, and so you can actually access this enterprise level or advancement of technology and basically use it as an SME. And it's like, if I feel like if people don't do that, they're going to be left behind a little bit, because it will be something that they'll go, oh, well, that's something that I'll get to or I'll do later. But it's a bit like the person who doesn't know how to use a spreadsheet, or know how to check their emails, and then they have to get an assistant to do it. It just slows down the whole operation. So yeah, I would sort of liken it to other technology adoptions and booms we had. I don't really think it's a fad. I think it's going to change the way we work, but it will be. I'll liken it to electricity. We won't see a lot of it, but it will be running through everything that we do, enhancing it or changing it.
Right. And in that case, like the first example you mentioned was how you can leverage it to effectively help you prospect
Yes.
in your the process of prospecting, and how that actually saves you time and thus money. I guess if you're boiling it down to
Yeah,
brass tacks.
exactly. And I've worked in outbound as part of B2B marketing for a number of years now. The one constant that I've seen time and time again is lots of the outbound emails that people receive, or cold emails. They tend to all be about the company, and it's probably quicker and easier to write an email that talks about the product and the benefits than it is to actually understand a prospect's pain points. But this is kind of where our AI comes in, because actually you can have a list of 500, 1,000, 5,000 emails, and you could basically have research that is personalized on each one of those decision makers or the company as a whole, and then find different angles that you could then kind of basically use in your emails. And I
Yeah.
think this is, so what I'm saying is it doesn't have to be that you're using AI to personalize each individual email, but if you're doing some research on an industry, then in actual fact, that could be really, really valuable in understanding and doing that research much faster, and then having the human eye and the human touch to actually go through and sort through and make sure that, a, it's all correct, and b, that it's actually, that it sounds conversational and is human like.
And so it sounds like what you're saying is that you could leverage AI to help you with transforming things that are inherent to like maybe your product, right? For example, like
Yep.
what benefits, features, the product feature list and the benefits that your product offers to the market, but the nuance and the psychological side of that, the marketing,
Yep.
is how to speak to pain points that the prospect, the customer, and your audience has. And doing that takes a lot of brain power. That's that takes it's like, we've got a handle on this thing, and we know that we've got an opening here, we know that we got this cog here and
Yeah.
this thing, but how does that translate into something that is can either solve a pain point or help them get to their desired situation? um
Yeah, and there's also, like, I mean, this is like pre AI, but I've always been fascinated that the intelligence involved in crafting like a really good email, and actually crafting a really good ad, but I think cold emails get a bit of a worse reputation than ads do. Is actually like quite a hard thing to do, and the knowledge about either the industry, or that you need in order to match like the benefits and the pain points and craft like a really good email would would typically come from somebody more senior, but they delegate that to somebody more junior in the organization. So what about in an AI scenario, you would have almost like entering and uploading your wiki knowledge of your company and all of its experiences and conversations and everything that would go with it. And then you would be able to use that to craft like a really personalized email, as an example.
wow. Yeah. And so it sounds like there's all this potential, yet SMEs are still and are reluctant and are still being reluctant to implement um, AI into their workflows, into their business. Is that because of fear, or is it based on like they're just caught up in the day to day and the processes that they've already developed, and so married to those processes that it either takes too much time, energy, or distraction
Yeah,
to
I
like
think you
translate those processes to AI.
I think it's depending on which industry you're looking at within smaller businesses or SMEs. I think it's a bit of day to day in that people are just probably getting through the day and like not really coping with their workload. I know that there's in terms of hiring is kind of down in a lot of industries, and so as a result, there's more work to do for one person, but yet there's not time to explore like automations or productivity solutions around that. So really
Yeah.
like the where I see the opportunity here is to kind of like step back almost and say, well, if that was one person's job, like what is it that we could automate there that would mean that we could actually get on with our strategic priorities and the things that are going to actually move the needle within the revenue for our business. And that could be, you know, client management, new business conversations, all of those kind of things. And like we said earlier, kind of like the more the prospecting, the nurturing of leads and those elements, especially in longer sales cycles, would kind of be basically managed by like a go to market system.
Right. Like if you were to um, give an example, like I think one of the most enthralling and interesting aspects of AI is how you can use it to actually increase your your visibility to prospects, and how you can actually outreach faster, and at more volume by implementing AI. But like you said, it takes you have to take a moment to step back and figure out, okay, what are the things in this whole process that we're conducting that could be automated. What are some examples that you could share with people about how AI can actually transform like an outreach campaign, or a an outbound campaign?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think first of all, you could look at. I think one of the key changes that we're seeing at the moment is it used to be that you would go to what I would call like a closed database that you would pay quite a high yearly annual fee for to then access data. So that would be the enrichment data around the contact, the decision maker's contact, and then their email and phone number. And what we're seeing now is actually like a move away from these closed databases to basically finding this data on open databases, which could be anything from Google to if you're a software company like G2 Reviews, all of those kind of things. And it's basically mining and scraping that data to then use AI to actually kind of talk about it in a particular email. Like I noticed that your customer satisfaction level is pretty low in this particular area. This is an area that we addressed last quarter, that kind of thing. And I think adding those elements to it can be really important. And then I think the other thing is just wastage. So it's all very well having like you'll send out a bunch of emails and just you think based on volume that you'll get some interested parties back, but not all of those companies can a buy from you, and B, they might be the wrong fit, so they don't turn out to be the best long term customers. So you can actually use AI to score them out of 10 based on different criteria that you've predefined. And I find like that account scoring, as an example, is like a really simple but effective way of going, right, where should we spend our time, resources, and effort? And it might be that you want to actually like launch an event which costs more money, but you need to prioritize which of those accounts are going to be more important. You can't invite all thousand of those accounts that you've got on your email list, as an example.
Right. Right. And that I guess encourages you to become more aware of your customer journey and the processes that you either have in place or need to have in place in order to have an effective like growth engine, right?
Yep.
Um, some of those things like will stand. It seems like by trying to use AI, you're like, well, I want this thing to work for me, but in order for it to work for you, you already have to have a process developed. Like you have to have a system, to attract, a system to convert, a system to deliver your service or your product, and a system to retain. And if you don't have those systems already in place, it's going to be very hard to implement something with AI. So how can actually AI, and this is, maybe I'm going off on a tangent, but how could you leverage AI if you're a business owner that's really thinking about, like, they're listening to you right now and they're thinking AI sounds awesome,
Yeah.
but maybe they don't even have an established process for sales development, right? And for prospecting. How could you leverage AI to actually get started and make sure that the processes that you have in place are adequate in order to automate?
Yeah, so I think it would go back to actually reviewing which part of the process and not like assuming is kind of broken or as not effective as it could be. It could be that you're not getting enough leads, in which case I would start with, like have you got like an effective outbound email system in place or set of processes? If you are getting enough leads and they're not converting, then it could be, have you got a process for actually like how you move the lead from like first sign of interest right through to discovery call? Have you got content that they see in place for there? And that could be another area that AI helps with in terms of brainstorming content, but then it could actually be filming content like we're doing right now. So it's kind of almost like the efficiencies are so that you can basically create content and brand awareness that people are actually going to see that are of a higher quality than necessarily like this is going to do everything for you. I think that's
Yeah.
the important part. Um, and
And
then,
beyond that, though, and if you allow me to interrupt, because I think you mentioned something that's very important, is how to you mentioned quality improvement,
yes,
and that is something that a lot of businesses struggle with as a when you're small and starting out. It's how do you implement a process that will allow you to continuously improve your business, and how do you measure that quality, right? How are you going to measure the quality improvement that AI implemented systems can bring to your processes, to your systems, to your growth engine, to your marketing, to your sales, and every other aspect? How can you measure the quality improvement when you're comparing it to the traditional methods that you might have been using previous to AI? Should it be based on the number of leads that you're able to reach? Should it be based on, like, oh, this is now something that I don't have to do,
yeah.
or it sounds like me now that we're sending emails, like it's able to capture my voice well? Like, what's the best way to measure that
Yeah, I mean
improvement?
that's definitely it's definitely an iterative process rather than like turn it on and then it's done. I think like anything in growth, you kind of the first thing you mention is does it sound like me and is it an effective sequence in terms of am I actually getting replies? Probably would be the first thing versus just like getting opens is kind of more like vanity. um are the replies like leading to like meetings? Are those meetings leading to opportunities? And it would be kind of assessing like how closely are these new leads associated with your ideal customer profile, um, which should be which you should use like AI to actually like evaluate that ideal customer profile from your existing customer bases as well. Really important, and what unique factors they have, and whether they match the new prospects that you are targeting by many different factors that would be quite hard to analyze, I think, or time intensive for a human to analyze, but you could
Right.
do with AI. I think that's the important thing, is that the element of research and the extent of it can be much more in depth, but you can still ask for a summary. And that's, I think, the beauty of AI in terms of you'd still need that iterative process and you still need to challenge AI at this stage, I would say. But at the same time, it is saving you a lot of time. And it also, I guess you could kind of describe it as like a sort of a sounding board or a back and forth, which can be quite useful, especially for small teams that don't always have somebody available to bounce it off or to work with.
It sounds like uh, you have to, in order to measure the quality of how you're implementing AI, and whether or not it's actually improving performance within your business, is you have to be very precise and exact with how you're leveraging the AI,
Yes.
because you can use AI on the creative side, like we've talked about emails. You mentioned copywriting, and how it can just help that creative process. Um, and that's a very subjective and psychological and mental kind of thing that you have to do. But when it comes to, for example, tools that will allow you to um, conduct faster outreach, automate uh, messages being sent, via email or LinkedIn DM or whatever direct outreach message method someone might be using,
Yeah.
that is much more processorial, where the AI is actually just leveraging like efficiency to take manual processes that you normally do and automate them.
Yep.
Um, so I guess you have to be very clear about what you want the AI to do. That will depend on how you're measuring the result. Would that be correct?
Yeah, I would say you have to be really clear beforehand. So, one example is, you mentioned earlier that back in, I don't know if it was 2021 or 2022, you and your colleagues were like trying like different prompts and you were asking questions. Now, that
That was
today,
before prompts even
oh,
existed.
was it?
It was just, you would just like, we were still using it kind of like Google. Do you know
Yeah,
what I mean? Like
but
we were
it was
using
a
it.
very short question you would have asked it, whereas you can go to the extent where if you have like internal data, which can then help inform the answer, you could input an expert prompt. Now, you don't need to be an expert to create an expert prompt. You need to ask, here's the criteria of what I'm looking to get out of this. Can you create me an expert prompt? Which then you have to sort of fill in the blanks. And that's kind of like how you can get probably the best out of AI, is just by actually inputting more information, as an example.
Would you say that's how, you know, successful clients of yours are starting to actually be able to blend like AI and the assistance with these large language models, um, with the expertise that they already kind of possess in their sales process? Like, is that is that part of how your clients are successfully kind of like managing that gap and bridging the gap?
Yeah, I would say so. In terms of like getting their knowledge and then attracting more clients, some of it can be to do with they have a lot of the ideas and the expertise and the knowledge, but and they might have written, or they've been on written blogs or articles or white papers, been on podcasts, that kind of thing, but then they don't really have any kind of consistency with it, and that's, I think, where AI can sort of take that content, and you could essentially put in a prompt to ask for lookalike content that doesn't copy it, and that's like a great way of like coming up with ideas. So you're coming up with ideas for headlines or topics of content that you want to then create, um, and that's kind of I think a good way of doing it, in terms of ensuring you have that consistency of your voice and your company brand like out there, is not running out of ideas basically.
I'm going to take a step back, and I'm going to ask you directly, um, what you think. If you're someone that's listening here that has a business or runs a business and has less than, let's say 50 employees,
Yep.
you have no technical expertise, you run the business, you probably feel like you're probably trying to fly the plane and build it at the same time, um, as lots of leaders, business leaders, and CEOs feel. How can you like what are the three tools you need to get familiar with to
Yeah.
start down this path? Like you're going to have to need some knowledge of something. Are there three softwares or three tools that you would recommend that people that are not technical
Yeah,
need
of course.
to
I think
get
the
used to?
everybody's still using email, even though we have Slack and WhatsApp and God knows how many other communication messages. So fixing your email is like probably first priority. There's an app called Fixer.ai, and that's Fyxer, I think. And what they've done is basically like I think they used to run like an executive assistant company. So they had a lot of the data around like what the most common questions were and that kind of thing. And you can get, if you receive an email, and let's say you're a founder or CEO of a less than 50-person business, you're going to get a lot of emails daily. It will come up with two replies for you straight away and learn, how you basically respond to emails as well. It will also categorize them for you and put them into put different tags on them and that kind of thing. And I think that's like the first thing is like getting a handle on your inbox and being able to handle that, I think would be the first thing. The next thing I would say in terms of, if you're looking at it for revenue operations and actually like growth is, I would say that you want to look at something that can develop your lead list. So there are two solutions. The reason why I mentioned two is because one has a bit of a higher technical learning curve than the other. So one that I use and have used for, since in the last year actually is clay.com. And I think it's fantastic. It can help you build lead lists and do what's called waterfall enrichment. So just all that means is
Mm-hmm.
rather than accessing one data provider to find out a decision maker's email, it can actually access six or seven, and then you don't have to sign up to six or seven different apps. But you can also do the things we talked about earlier, like account scoring, sorting through company data and looking for like B2B versus B2C. You can do all that stuff. You can research, you can use, basically AI to come up with personalized first lines around, the company research that you get from that particular prospect. Can do all of those things, but it does come with a caveat that it takes a little bit of time to learn it. Um, and then the second tool that I've started using myself recently is called Full Enrich, and it does the first thing that I said is just you've got a waterfall where you've got a list of prospects that you want to go after and target, and you can basically put it into this waterfall, and it will find all of the contact details from different data providers. And so I think that's going back to what I said earlier is like a lot of these platforms are actually like consolidating or they're providing access to other platforms and integrating so you don't have to go to 20 different places. And I think that's the future.
Yeah, I found myself going to a lot of places. I started on ChatGPT,
Yep.
right? And then I have found other softwares that leverage the power of the OpenAI API, for
Yep.
example, and use ChatGPT or Claude or other other language models. But I find myself going back to ChatGPT lots of times when I want to like ideate, and
The,
that's where I get a lot of value from. But I see there is a lot of AI being injected into tools that I use every day. And
yeah.
I'm sometimes almost reticent to use the AI implementation within the tools that I'm already accustomed to that don't have AI.
Right.
I think my question here is then, is AI a shiny object?
I think I guess the counterpoint to all of this is what are you using AI for? And I hate to answer a question with a question, but it's like, are you using it to do your work for you, or are you using it as a kind of almost like a work sparring partner? So being able to come up with different ideas, ideate, that kind of thing, and are using it as a learning tool as well for accountability. There's all those kind of areas that it can be used for. I think the problem we're having is OpenAI or ChatGPT, which is essentially like the mass market one, that brand that everybody has heard of. It is a large language model in that you can use it for it's got a kind of a basic knowledge of pretty much every type of topic, but not an in-depth knowledge of each of different topics. And I think that's what we're going to see a little bit more of. Some there's other models that, like Claude as an example, Claude.ai by Anthropic, and it's a much better writer, and it can help you write code as well and create really simple apps. There's all those kind of things. So what I'm saying is that I don't think it's a shiny object if you have a predefined use case of what it is, the problem that you want solved. I think if you start exploring and go down the rabbit hole, yes, it's probably just a distraction.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it depends on how you determine. Yeah, that sounds about right. It's like it depends on how how you're you're using AI will depend on whether or not it's a distraction, right? Like whether or not it's like social media. Is social media a shiny object? Largely, yes, but it's also influenced and changed the entire way that we act as humans across the world. And so it's not necessarily just like a distraction. It is actually a tool that can be leveraged for power, influence, reach, reaching audiences across borders. Um, what, in your opinion, um, what are some concrete things that's for someone that's prospecting that are either, let's say, what's the word I'm looking to criteria? What specific criteria could you leverage AI for um, when you are conducting, for example, prospecting? And let's like get down to like the brass tacks. Like, what are the things that you can ask AI to do that are going to help you either get higher quality leads into your pipeline, um, filter? Like, what are the types of things that you could do?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, first of all, I would ask for a match of the industries that you're going after with your ideal customer profile criteria. And that's not just industry and revenues and employee size. It can be other factors, like it can be, does this do the products or services they sell have a recurring or reoccurring value? In do they have sort of revenue growth from that? Um, are they do they have a very small target addressable market or a large one that they can sell to? There's like all of these different factors which can be really crucial if you're trying to pick the right companies that you want to spend your time speaking with, to then hopefully sign them up as new clients. Um, Another factor I would look at is you could use AI for basically brainstorming some pain point analysis. So, list of pain points and challenges per industry. And there is a tool that you can use called Perplexity, which basically has citations of each of the sources of where it got the information from, and that tool can then help you find things that have happened in that particular industry or that particular account, and you can kind of research different aspects on there. So that is a great way to use AI, I would say, in your kind of prospecting research process.
Incredible. Um, there's a story that I read as I was kind of researching what you've done and the AI space, and you mentioned an example of a company that I think it was very small, and through the use of AI, we're somehow able uh, to generate conversations with some major brands.
Yep.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. So it's a fairly small local company that I work with, that they basically provide kind of vinyl wrapping services, which is it's a fairly kind of newish industry in the UK, at least. I know it's quite big as a profession in places like South Korea. Essentially, what they were doing is they had some really good sort of marquee clients that they'd done work for, like big super yachts that they'd wrapped, and done some kind of big defense companies as well. But they didn't have any kind of presence in the market. Nobody really knew who they were. And so what we thought we'd do is basically we were interested in doing work for some retailers because they'd done some subcontracting for other sort of construction subcontracting companies they worked with, and they'd done it on some major supermarkets. So we kind of name dropped those in the email. But the other thing that we did is we basically gave them an offer, and that offer was where we were based in Hampshire. We would like to come into one of your stores and wrap one of your tills or like a bit of furniture just to kind of show you what it could look like. When can we do it? And it was kind of a bold move in that we're sort of saying we'll come out there and do it for free. All we ask is that we get a chance to do some of the paid work afterwards if you like what you see. And we got a really, really good response rate from it. Two of the major supermarkets in the UK that you would have heard of sort of came back to us. And then other things that we tried that worked really well was just people seem to love like before and after. So we actually just showed, we said, would you like to see like what it looked like in this supermarket before we did it, and then this one afterwards? And we did the same for the hotels industry as well. And we had people reply back and say, yeah, that sounds really good. Let's send me the photos. And yeah, so it basically got us in the door with these major UK brands, some of them international as well, that otherwise, without lots of marketing, brand awareness, everything else, we wouldn't have. But I think it was because the offer was so good.
Wow. Um, you're you're doing an event. It's depending on when people hear this, it will be in the future or in the past, right? Um, but it's pretty big. You have partnered up with I believe a bank in the UK,
Yeah.
and this is making some waves. Can you tell us a little bit about what it is and how it's related to the conversation on AI?
Yeah, so we're partnering with Barclays Eagle Labs to do an event about how small businesses in the UK can use AI to increase their revenues. And it all came about because I was researching a McKinsey research paper that was talking about how SMEs are actually only at kind of, I think it was around 50 or 60% compared to their kind of enterprise counterparts in terms of like productivity. And it was basically what we can do to kind of help with this. And so I wanted to show some practical low cost ways that people could actually like utilize what is already out there on the web. So that was the first thing, like publicly available data. And then the other part was using AI and the tools that are available to like just try out and see what can be done basically. And yeah, like we already ran the event, like a similar event last October, and there was quite sort of a overwhelming take up with it. A lot of people used the information that we gave them to then
Mm-hmm.
generate leads for themselves. And yeah, it was really really interesting just hearing different businesses and their stories, and also the level of kind of understanding and maturity of where they are with their sort of automation and AI journey as well.
And where they are as a business, because when you say the McKinsey research paper that you're referring to um, mentioned that these small businesses are operating way less productively than large companies and enterprises. Um, how should people, like, who's the ideal kind of person that needs to attend this event? What is who is this for, and how would they um, know whether or not they're an ideal person that would get benefit from attending this event? Are there certain criteria that they should look at and do some self reflection on as a business owner to make sure that they're getting the most out of this event?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. The ideal criteria is really kind of scale up businesses who are kind of they've reached their first like few million in revenue and they're looking to basically scale beyond that. So ideally, it's companies that already have like a product market fit in that they're not selling to customers that were referred to them from like the very start, but actually customers who are looking to grow in their markets. And maybe they've reached like a bit of a plateau in terms of their lead generation, their marketing, their positioning, all of those kind of areas, really. And yeah, I think those sorts of companies can really benefit from, like I say, that some of the automation and the other things to really increase the efficiency within their business.
What about anything specific that they might be struggling with that you think will probably be addressed in this event?
Yeah, I think the thing they'll be struggling with is definitely hours and hours spent on either themselves as an individual or their sales reps, basically researching data manually, researching prospects and what to say in emails manually, and then actually not getting like a lot of those emails delivered or struggling with it. And I think that those sorts of aspects is where we've seen that we can really 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 help with what we gave on the last talk.
Great. Well, where can people find out about this event? Obviously, we're creating this content for a wider audience now and in the future. But where should they go? I'm guessing there's going to be a recording somewhere once it's over. If people are listening to this after the fact, where should they find out about it?
The first place they can find out about it very easily is if they just go to my LinkedIn profile, which is Mark Cann. So linkedin.com/in/Mark Cann. And there'll be an event that's associated with that profile. And then you can go and actually register through to the Barclays Eagle Labs website. And then there will be a replay on the Barclays Eagle Labs YouTube channel after the event. So the event's going to be on March 19th at 1 p.m. UK time. And yeah, they can attend that if they've registered to get access to it, and if they can't, then we will be doing a replay as well.
Great. Well, thank you for your time and for sharing all of that valuable information, Mark. Much appreciated, and it's very interesting. It's very interesting to see what we have on the horizon with the rise of AI and all the possibilities that it affords us as business owners, as humans, and as a society. So, thanks again for sharing.
No problem at all. Thanks, Ron.